Picture this, a grown woman standing at the edge of a completely empty pool. Two police officers behind her, fumbling over her words, trying to explain why she thought she had the right to use something she never once paid for. Yeah, that actually happened, and I have no regrets. Let me take you back to where this whole thing started. 3 years ago, I bought my dream home. Nothing fancy, nothing over the top, just a solid 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood with good schools, clean streets, and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. Exactly what I wanted. But the thing that really sold me on this house, the thing that made me sign that contract without a second thought, was the backyard. It was big, bigger than anything else I'd seen in that price range. And from the moment I walked out those back doors and looked at that open space, I had one vision in my head: a pool. So I made it happen. I hired a contractor, I pulled the permits, I paid every single dollar out of my own pocket. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, months of planning, weeks of construction. I watched that pool get built from a hole in the ground to something I was genuinely proud of. By the time it was finished, it was beautiful. Crystal clear water, outdoor lighting, a small deck area with seating. My own private escape after long days at work. Mine, every inch of it. Or so I thought. Now, every neighborhood has one. You know exactly the type I'm talking about. The person who treats the HOA like it's their personal kingdom. The one who shows up to every meeting, sits at the front, and speaks like they've been elected president of the entire city. In my neighborhood, that person was Karen. And before anyone says anything, yes, that was actually her name. I'm not using it as a label. That was the name on her mailbox, on her HOA badge, and on every passive-aggressive letter she'd ever slipped under people's doors. Karen had lived in this neighborhood for over a decade, and in that time she had built herself a very specific reputation. She knew every bylaw, every rule, every regulation, and she used that knowledge not to help the community, but to control it. She had gotten noise complaints filed against a man for mowing his lawn at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. She had forced a family to repaint their front door because the shade of blue was 2 tones off from what the HOA guidelines allowed. She had made a retired couple tear out a small garden they'd spent an entire summer building because it was 6 inches outside the approved planting zone. And here's the thing about Karen that made her truly dangerous. She had never once faced any real consequences. Every time she pushed, people folded. Every time she threatened, people backed down. That pattern had gone on so long that she genuinely believed she was untouchable. She was about to find out she was wrong. It was a Saturday afternoon in late June. I was floating in my pool, music playing low, not a care in the world. It was one of those perfect summer days where everything just feels right. I had worked a brutal week, and this was my reward. And then I heard my gate open. I sat up, and there was Karen walking into my backyard like she owned the place. And she wasn't alone. She had 2 women with her, both carrying pool bags, both already in their swimwear, like this had been planned for weeks, because it had been. I pulled out my earbuds. I said, calm as I could, "Can I help you?" Karen smiled, that particular smile that people like her have, the one that's polite on the surface but absolutely dripping with arrogance underneath. She said, "Oh, don't mind us. We're just here to enjoy the pool." I blinked. "This is my private pool, Karen." And then she said it, the line that started everything. She looked at me, completely serious, and said, "Actually, any permanent fixture within the HOA boundary can be classified as a community amenity under shared property guidelines." I checked. I just stared at her for a moment because I genuinely could not process what I was hearing. She had done research. She had shown up prepared. She had actually convinced herself and 2 other people that my pool, that I designed, permitted, and paid for entirely on my own, somehow belonged to everyone. I told her to leave. She acted offended. She gathered her guests slowly, deliberately, like she was making a point. And as she walked out, she turned around and said, "I'd look into the bylaws if I were you. You might be surprised." That sentence lit a fire in me that did not go out for months. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, a cold cup of coffee, and every HOA document I had ever been given, which, honestly, I had never read past the first page. That was mistake number 1. I wasn't going to make mistake number 2. I read everything. Every bylaw, every amendment, every definition of shared property, community amenity, and common area. And the further I read, the more clearly I could see that Karen's claim had absolutely no legal foundation, not even close. My pool was built on my...
But the motion failed. Badly. Other board members weren't willing to touch something that could expose the HOA to a lawsuit, especially after my certified letter had made the legal boundaries crystal clear. Karen sat down looking like someone had pulled the floor out from under her. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, she showed up at my pool again, this time with 4 people. I had a security camera by then. I had installed it specifically for this situation. I documented everything. I didn't go outside. I just let the footage record and immediately sent Karen another written notice, this time through the HOA board directly, formally documenting the trespass. The board sent her a mild warning letter that she completely ignored. So I kept documenting every visit, every date, every timestamp, every person she brought with her. I was building something, a paper trail so clean and so complete that when the moment came to use it, there would be no wiggle room, no excuses, no escape. That moment was coming faster than Karen knew. Here's the thing about people like Karen. They expect you to fight them on their terms. Complaints, meetings, arguments, counter letters, an endless back and forth that they are very comfortable with because they've been doing it for years. They know that game better than anyone. So I decided not to play it. I thought about what Karen actually wanted. She wanted access to my pool. She had built an entire social identity around it at this point, telling neighbors it was community property, inviting people over, acting like she had won. The pool was her prize. So I decided to take the prize away. On a Wednesday night, I called the pool drainage company I had used during a previous maintenance job. I explained what I needed. They came out early Thursday morning before sunrise. Quietly, professionally, and completely legally, because it is 100% within a property owner's rights to drain their own pool, they emptied it, every drop. By 7 a.m., the pool was nothing but bare concrete and silence. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat by the back window, and waited, because I knew exactly what was coming, and I wanted to be ready for every second of it. She showed up at 10 a.m. I watched on my security camera as Karen walked through the side gate, which she had apparently just decided she had a right to use, with 2 guests in tow, pool bags over their shoulders, sunglasses on, completely relaxed, like it was a normal summer Saturday.
And then she stopped. She stood at the edge of what used to be a sparkling pool and stared down at bare, gray concrete. I watched her face on the camera go through about 6 different emotions in 4 seconds: confusion, disbelief, anger, and then that particular kind of rage that only comes when someone realizes they've been outplayed. She turned around and marched straight to my front door. The knocking started immediately, loud, aggressive, the kind of knocking that's meant to intimidate. I let it go for a moment. Then I opened the door, calm as I have ever been in my life, coffee mug in hand. "Where is the water?" she demanded. "I drained my pool," I said. "My property, my choice." She told me I had no right to do that. I reminded her that I had every right to do exactly that. She told me I was being petty and vindictive and that she was going to report me to the HOA. I told her she was welcome to do that. Then she made her biggest mistake of the entire situation. She stepped forward onto my property without permission and started demanding I let her inside to see documentation proving the pool was actually mine. I stepped back, calmly closed the door, picked up my phone, and dialed the non-emergency police line to report a trespasser who was refusing to leave my property. Then I went back to my coffee. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. Karen was still outside. She had not left. She was on her phone, pacing, clearly trying to get someone from the HOA board on the line to back her up. When the police pulled up, she actually looked relieved, like she thought they were there to help her. That relief lasted about 90 seconds. I came outside with a folder. Inside that folder was my property deed, a printed copy of the relevant HOA bylaws with my handwritten annotations, both certified letters I had sent Karen with delivery confirmations, and a printed log of every documented trespass incident with timestamps from my security footage. I handed it to the first officer without saying a word. Karen started talking immediately. She launched into her community property theory with the same confidence she had shown at the HOA meeting. The officer listened politely, asked a few clarifying questions, then looked at my documentation.
It took him about 4 minutes to reach a conclusion that Karen had somehow never reached in months of doubling down. My name was on the deed. My property lines were clearly drawn. My pool, my rules, my decision to drain it, my right to have trespassers removed. Karen received a formal trespassing warning. She was told that any future unauthorized entry onto my property could result in an arrest. She stood there in her swimwear, pool bag still on her shoulder, and had absolutely nothing left to say. I thanked the officers, went back inside, and felt something settle in my chest that I hadn't felt in months. Word got around fast. This is a suburban neighborhood. It always does. By that evening, my phone was getting messages from neighbors I had barely spoken to before. Some were just checking in. Others had stories of their own. The family whose outdoor kitchen Karen had tried to claim. The couple whose garden had been torn out. A man who said Karen had filed 3 separate noise complaints against him in a single year over completely legal activity. One by one, they started talking. Many of them for the first time, because for the first time they had seen that Karen could actually be stopped. 3 weeks after the cop scene, Karen was voted out of her HOA board position. The vote wasn't even close. The board also quietly revised their complaint handling procedures, something that should have happened years earlier. Karen still lives in the neighborhood. She keeps to herself now. The transformation has been remarkable. Turns out the moment someone stands their ground with documentation, legal clarity, and zero emotional reaction, the whole illusion collapses. People like Karen operate on the assumption that you'll fold. The moment you don't, they have nothing left. So what did I actually learn from all of this? A few things that I think are worth saying out loud. First, read your HOA documents, all of them. Before someone like Karen uses them against you, you need to know exactly what they say. Knowledge is the first line of defense. Second, document everything. Not because you're paranoid, but because when the moment comes where you need proof, you will be so grateful that you have it. Timestamps, photos, written records, certified letters. Build your case before you need it. Third, don't fight emotion with emotion. Karen wanted a reaction. She fed on conflict. The most powerful thing I did throughout this entire situation was stay calm, stay legal, and stay patient. That combination is almost impossible to fight against. And fourth, sometimes the best move isn't to argue. Sometimes it's to simply remove the thing that someone is trying to take from you and let them explain themselves to the people with badges. I refilled the pool 2 weeks later, by the way. It's beautiful again, and I enjoy every single minute in it just a little bit more now. If this story hit home, hit that like button. You know why.